90%. 90% of startups fail.
It's a brutal statistic.
It really is. And if you're an early stage tech founder listening to this right now, you know that number. I mean, you probably lose sleep over it.
Oh, absolutely.
You're spending your nights agonizing over product market fit or, tweaking your pricing model or worrying your tech stack isn't scalable.
Right. The usual suspects.
Exactly. But what if you're obsessing over the wrong metric entirely?
Which is often the case.
Yeah, because the data shows that 65% of those startup failures, 65% have absolutely nothing to do with the product or the market.
It's staggering.
They are caused by psychological incompatibility between co-founders.
It is the ultimate blind spot. I mean, you can have this revolutionary SaaS platform and a mountain of seed funding.
Right.
But if the humans at the helm fundamentally cannot process stress together, the entire structure just burns to the ground.
Which is exactly why today's deep dive is going to skip the generic business advice and get, well, almost uncomfortably personal.
Like the sound of that.
Yeah. We are looking at a really unique stack of sources today. We're diving into the raw, completely unfiltered psychological test results published by Dr. Ari Masudi.
Yes, Dr. Masudi.
Right. And for some context, he is a former researcher in regenerative medicine who pivoted into the world of business consulting.
Quite the pivot.
It is. But rather than handing prospective clients this buzzword-heavy resume about being a team player or whatever, he did something radical.
He published comprehensive essays detailing his own mental wiring.
Exactly. His exact behavioral scores, his core fears, his conflict triggers, all of it out there for the world to see.
It's a truly radical level of transparency. I mean, he put his own psychology under the microscope to prove a point to the founders he works with.
And that point is
that if you want to survive the brutal early stages of company building, you have to stop guessing about psychological fit. You have to start measuring it.
So our mission today is to decode his specific profile. We're going to use his data as a sort of masterclass.
A blueprint, really.
Yeah, a blueprint to show you how to assess not just your own psychological makeup, but the wiring of the people you're about to go into business with.
Because you have to think about it like technical debt.
Oh, that's a great way to frame it. Every founder understands technical debt.
Right. You write sloppy code to ship a feature fast, fully knowing you're going to have to pay for it later when the system scales.
Yeah.
But let's take that a step further. What we were really talking about here is psychological debt.
Psychological debt. I love that term.
When you build a founding team without understanding how their baseline personalities interact under pressure, you are accumulating psychological debt.
And you might get through the honeymoon phase, right?
Sure. Incorporating the company, building the MVP, everyone is happy, but the interest on that debt compounds.
And when does the bill actually come due?
Well, usually right around the time your runway drops to 3 months.
Ouch.
Yeah. Or your lead engineer abruptly quits and your seed investors start demanding a massive pivot.
That is when the superficial harmony evaporates. Superficial harmony. That concept is all over Ari's essays. We need to unpack that because it highlights a massive conceptual flaw in how founders traditionally build their teams.
We tend to focus entirely on complementary skills, don't we?
Totally. You find this brilliant, introverted technical architect who can build literally anything.
Right.
And then you pair them with a highly charismatic, extroverted sales visionary who can sell anything.
It looks perfect on paper.
You look at the two resumes side by side and say, boom, all bases covered.
But you are optimizing for a spreadsheet, not reality.
Wow. Optimizing for a spreadsheet.
It's true. Ari argues that people decisions determine 80% of a startup's trajectory.
80%.
Yeah. Yet founders spend maybe, 5% of their time assessing whether these perfectly complementary skill sets belong to human beings who can actually survive working in the same room for the next 5 to 10 years.
It honestly reminds me of assembling a fantasy sports roster.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right, you draft the highest scoring point guard and the most dominant center based purely on their technical stats.
Sure.
But if both of those players have massive egos, refuse to pass the ball, and fundamentally distrust each other the second they step onto the court, your team is going to implode on day one.
The technical stats are completely irrelevant if the underlying psychology is poison.
Exactly.
And the danger of that fantasy sports mentality is that it often leads to that superficial harmony we just mentioned.
Because nobody wants to rock the boat.
Right. Superficial harmony means nobody is actively yelling in the boardroom, but it also means nobody is challenging bad ideas.
Oh, I see.
It means the CTO sees a massive flaw in the CEO's roadmap, but stays quiet because they don't want to trigger a passive-aggressive standoff.
So they just let the ship sink quietly.
Precisely. Ari points out that the best founders don't look for consensus at all. They seek constructive friction.
Constructive friction. But to have constructive friction, it requires you to actually know your own blind spots. spots.
Yes.
And as Ari notes, blind spots are, by definition, invisible to you.
That's the tricky part. You might think your communication style is just, decisive leadership.
While your co-founder is over there experiencing you as an unpredictable dictator.
Exactly. And this is where the diagnostic tools come in. You do not have to rely on gut feelings or vague personality clashes.
There's actual science here.
Yes, there are rigorous frameworks that map out these behavioral tendencies long before you ever sign a term sheet.
Well, let's jump right into the first tool Ari uses to throw his own behavior into the spotlight, the DISC model.
A very standard, very useful tool.
Yeah, and for those who aren't familiar, DISC categorizes observable day-to-day behaviors into 4 quadrants: dominant, influential, steady, and conscientious.
It basically maps out your pace, how you communicate, and how you naturally respond to problems.
So looking at Ari's published profile, he is unambiguously a high D, dominant.
Very high.
Paired with a very strong C, conscientious. But let's start with the D. The dominant trait is characterized by an extreme speed of execution.
It's a complete intolerance for vagueness, slowness, or bureaucracy.
And he doesn't sugarcoat this at all in his writing. He literally states, quote, "I don't walk into a room to please people. I walk in to make things happen."
He is very blunt about it.
He openly admits he has zero patience for useless meetings. If an interaction isn't leading to a tangible result, it drains him.
Which is classic high D.
But look, honestly, if I'm a founder and I'm reading that a potential consultant or co-founder is impatient, blunt, and refuses to sit through standard meetings, massive red flags are going up.
You'd be worried.
Yeah, that sounds like a fancy psychological excuse for just being a nightmare to work with.
What would be a nightmare if he were a pure D?
Okay, clarify that.
A purely dominant profile without any tempering traits is essentially a bulldozer.
Of course, wrecking everything.
Right. They will run straight through a brick wall just because it's in their way, often destroying the team's morale in the process.
So what saves Ari from being just a bulldozer?
You have to look at the secondary trait. This is why the conscientious, or C dimension, is the critical mechanism here.
The C trait.
The C trait is obsessed with analytical rigor, precision, and finding the objective truth.
So it acts as the brakes on the bulldozer.
More like a highly advanced targeting system.
Oh, I like that.
The conscientiousness prevents impulsivity. Because remember, his background in regenerative medicine.
Right, the science background.
He has deeply ingrained scientific rigor. You cannot just be impulsive in a biology lab.
You blow something up.
Or ruin a 5-year study. You have to measure, isolate variables, and analyze.
So how does that play out in the boardroom?
Before his dominant side acts with that aggressive speed, his conscientious side breaks the complex problem down. He finds the precise lever to pull.
He isn't just running fast.
No, he is calculating the exact trajectory of the sprint before he ever takes a step.
Okay, that chemistry between the traits completely changes the picture. Let's put that into a gritty startup scenario.
Let's do it.
Imagine you have 3 months of runway left. The product is glitching, and user churn is spiking.
Panic mode.
Total panic. A pure D might just start firing people and demanding the engineering team work a 100-hour week without a plan.
Just do more, faster.
Exactly. While a pure C might get trapped in analysis paralysis.
Spending 2 months building a complex dashboard to track the churn while the company literally goes bankrupt.
Yes, but Ari's D plus C combination means he will aggressively lock the founders in a room.
Demand they strip away all the vanity metrics immediately.
Diagnose the actual root cause of the churn with scientific precision, and then force them to execute the fix by Friday.
Exactly. He admits he is difficult to manage if you try to micromanage him. He knows he is blunt.
But in a survival scenario, you aren't optimizing for a polite coworker.
No, you are optimizing for a precise, rapid response executioner.
Which is incredibly effective. But here is where we have to dig deeper.
Right, because DIC only goes so far.
Yeah, the DIC model is fantastic for showing us how Ari behaves. The speed, the bluntness, the analytical breakdown. But it doesn't tell us why.
It doesn't explain the engine generating all this intensity.
For that, Ari transitions to the Enneagram model.
Now, the Enneagram is fascinating because it moves us away from observable behavior in the office.
It goes deeper.
It forces us to look at underlying motivation. It asks a much more vulnerable question. What is the fundamental emotional fear driving this person's entire life?
Wow. Okay. In the Enneagram framework, your core type is your primary engine, and your wing is the adjacent personality trait that kind of flavors how you achieve those core goals.
Think of the core type as the engine block, and the wing is the steering system.
Perfect. So Ari's results show he is a type 8.
known as the challenger or the protector.
with a strong wing 3, which is the achiever.
Now, Type 8 is arguably the most intense profile on the Enneagram.
Really?
Oh yes, their core driving fear is being controlled, manipulated, or seen as weak by others.
Fear of weakness.
And Ari is incredibly transparent about this in his essays. He notes that he learned very early in life that visible weakness comes at an unbearably high price.
So what's the coping mechanism?
To ensure he is never victimized or controlled, he built a massive, impenetrable shell of strength and assertiveness.
It is a literal psychological armor.
That's exactly what it is.
And if we stick with that analogy of a knight in full plate armor, when you see a knight charging at you, they look aggressive and terrifying.
Very intimidating.
But the fundamental mechanism of that armor isn't offensive. Its primary purpose isn't to hurt the people on the outside.
What is it then?
Its primary purpose is to prevent the fragile human on the inside from being crushed.
That is the exact mechanism of a Type 8. They hold their ground and refuse to back down in an argument, not because they take joy in dominating you.
But because yielding feels entirely unsafe to them.
Exactly. They refuse to be at the mercy of another person's incompetence or power trip.
But there is a massive bright side to this, especially for a startup founder who might hire someone like Ari.
The protector element.
Yes, because Type 8s are so hyper-aware of power dynamics and vulnerability, they don't just protect themselves. They become incredibly fierce protectors of their inner circle.
Let's bring it back to that scenario where the runway is almost gone.
Okay.
Let's say your lead investors are trying to force a heavily diluted down round that will basically wipe out the founder's equity.
A nightmare scenario.
If your consultant or co-founder is driven by a need to be liked, they will cave to the investors.
They'll fold.
But Ari, as a Type 8, will step directly in front of the founders and take the hits.
He becomes the armor for the company.
He will go to war with the board because his core wiring demands that he protect the vulnerable entity, in this case, the startup, from being exploited.
That is so powerful, but we have to factor in that steering system, right? The wing 3, the achiever.
Ah, yes, because this isn't just about standing your ground. The wing 3 adds a ruthless obsession with winning.
A Type 8 with a wing 3 doesn't just want to survive the battle.
No, they want to crush the metrics while doing it. The wing 3 brings intense ambition and an absolute hatred of visible failure.
So he holds everyone to an impossible standard.
He judges himself and everyone around him primarily on their ability to deliver results.
And Ari acknowledges the cost of this.
It's not easy.
The Enneagram outlines specific areas for growth for every type, and for him, it is learning to lower the drawbridge.
Learning to receive, to be moved by things, and to show the vulnerability hidden beneath all that armor.
Which, for someone whose literal core fear is showing weakness,
Is a massive psychological mountain to climb.
Okay, so we have the behavioral pace from DISC,
Yep.
we have the underlying fears from the Enneagram, but if we want the operational blueprint, how these traits mechanically interact with the daily friction of startup life,
We need to look at the gold standard of personality metrics,
the Big Five.
also known as the Ocean Model.
Yes, and the Big Five measures 5 independent spectrums: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism.
But instead of just reading his scores down a list, we need to look at the chemical reactions between these traits.
Let's start with the most explosive combination in his entire profile. His agreeableness score is incredibly low, a 37 out of 100.
Very low.
But his neuroticism score, which measures emotional instability and anxiety, is also incredibly low, a 27 out of 100.
That specific pairing is fascinating. Let's look at the mechanics of a crisis through that lens.
Okay.
Agreeableness measures your tendency to adapt to others, to give in, and to seek social harmony. With a 37, Ari naturally leans toward conflict.
He is unaccommodating by default.
Yes.
But wait, if you are a founder, a 37 in agreeableness sounds like a fast track to a toxic culture. Why would you want someone who defaults to conflict?
Because you have to pair it with that 27 in neuroticism, extreme emotional stability.
Oh, I see where this is going.
If he had low agreeableness and high neuroticism, he would be a screaming, unpredictable nightmare who starts fights every time he feels anxious.
Just lashing out at everyone.
Right. But because his neuroticism is essentially at the floor, he doesn't start fights out of panic. He starts them out of cold, calculated necessity.
Ah, it's the Mr. Spock dynamic he actually mentions in his essays.
Exactly. Highly logical. Diagnosing the chaos without absorbing the emotional panic of the room.
Consider the role of a business consultant for early-stage tech company. Your entire job is to walk into a room, identify the founder's most dangerous blind spots, and tell them exactly what they do not want to hear.
Right. If Ari were highly agreeable, say, and 80 out of 100, he would instinctively try to soften the blow.
He'd be like, well, maybe we could try this other way.
Exactly. He would nod along with a terrible marketing strategy just to keep the founder comfortable.
Right.
High agreeableness would render him completely useless in his specific role.
He explicitly states he prefers constructive friction to comfortable validation. He isn't there to be easy to manage.
He's there to fix it.
But how does he actually get things done if he's that unaccommodating? That brings us to the next chemical reaction in his Big Five, combining his openness score of 77 with his conscientiousness score of 83.
Openness is about intellectual curiosity and a desire for novelty. A 77 means he loves new ideas, complex theories, and the creative chaos of building something from nothing.
But openness on its own is just a brainstorming session.
It's a whiteboard full of ideas that never ship.
Right, and he makes a huge caveat in his writing. He says he is not an abstract explorer.
No, he wants results.
He loves the creative effervescence of a startup, but only if it leads to real-world change. If the creativity isn't finding a lever for immediate action, he gets visibly frustrated.
And that frustration is his conscientiousness, his highest score at 83, demanding order.
Because conscientiousness is the engine of execution.
It is organization, discipline, and keeping commitment. When you mix high openness with high conscientiousness, you get someone who can dream up a radical pivot.
But then immediately build the rigid operational infrastructure required to execute it?
He actually describes disorganization as a tragic waste of potential.
It gives him an almost allergic reaction.
It does.
And rounding out the Big Five, we have an extroversion score of 72. But we need to clarify what extroversion means in this scientific context, because it isn't about being the life of the party, right?
Not at all. In the Big Five, extroversion encompasses assertiveness and how you seek stimulation.
Okay.
Ari scores high here because he actively seeks out intense debates. He can work a room to build a network, but he lacks what he calls spontaneous warmth.
So no small talk at the water cooler.
Right. He operates on a frequency of intense engagement rather than bubbly friendliness.
Which makes total sense given the Type 8 armor and the low agreeableness.
It all connects.
But even Mr. Spock had a human half.
That's very true.
Throughout all these rigorous, somewhat intimidating metrics, the speed, the bluntness, the low warmth, there's a hidden sensitivity that Ari reveals.
It was my favorite part of his essays.
He views the pre-seed to seed phase of a startup as a magical moment. That is his word, magical.
It is the beautiful paradox of his entire profile. Underneath the armor, he is deeply moved by the act of creation.
Yeah.
He views that fragile window where an exploratory idea is violently fighting to become a sustainable, real-world business as something sacred that needs to be protected.
And he uses his rigorous, unaccommodating, highly stable mind to safeguard that birth.
Exactly.
Which really brings us to the core thesis of his transparency. If you take one thing away from decoding Ari's profile today, it's that his value is strictly contained to the chaotic, early stages of company building.
Put him in a mature Series D corporation with endless HR meetings and bureaucratic red tape.
And his low agreeableness and high dominance would likely get him fired.
Almost certainly. He is a specialized instrument. He is built specifically for the pre-seed and seed phases, where time is your enemy and ideas have to be transformed into tangible traction before the bank account hits zero.
What Ari Masudi has done here is give us a blueprint for how to actually look at the people we build companies with.
It's invaluable.
Knowing your own skills and knowing your co-founders' resumes is just the starting block. You cannot build a resilient tech company if you are operating on assumptions about how the person sitting across from you processes fear, conflict, and pressure.
Because when the pressure inevitably hits, everyone defaults to their deepest psychological wiring.
Without fail.
If you haven't mapped that out, the psychological debt will bankrupt you long before the financial debt does.
And it requires a level of honesty that, frankly, most founders are terrified to engage in.
It's scary to look in the mirror like that.
But Ari wasn't afraid to put his 37 agreeableness score and his deepest Type 8 fears on the internet for everyone to see. He knows that diagnostic clarity is the only way to beat that 90% failure rate.
You have to stress test the psychology of your team just as rigorously as you stress test your code.
It completely reframes how you should approach your next hiring, interview, or co-founder discussion.
It really does.
So as you go back to building your company today, we want to leave you with this final provocative thought to mull over.
Next time you're looking at a potential co-founder, stop asking what technical skills they bring to the table.
Instead, ask yourself, what is their deepest underlying psychological fear? And when the immense existential pressure of startup life inevitably squeezes them, how will their psychological armor grind against yours?